inspiration, motivation, or hope? Do you let fear hold you back? Sometimes you feel lost or just stuck in your own thoughts, and you want a clear path to give you results. Then, my friend, you are in the right place. My name is Rachel Best, and I am your host of How to Make a Mark in the World, Finding Your Signature. Go ahead and grab a pen and paper because you're going to want to take notes. Welcome back to How to Make a Mark in the World, Finding Your Signature. Today, we have an amazing guest. I got the opportunity to meet a few months back at a speaking competition, and it's just amazing how when you get into rooms with amazing people, how you just make these connections with one another, and they just start developing into amazing friendships, relationships, and just linking arms together to making our impact in the world. And so today, first of all, I want to say, go ahead, grab your pen and paper, because I'm sure Marilyn's going to share some really good information with you, and you're going to want to write it down. When we write things down, we're 50% more chance to remember it. So go ahead, grab your pen and paper. All right, Marilyn, go ahead and tell us who you are and how you are making your mark in the world.
Pretty loaded question. Who am I, right? So I'm a heck of a lot of things. I am a Latina from Brooklyn, New York. I reside now in New Jersey. I've been a nurse for about 37 years. So I became a nurse very early at the age of 17 years old. I'm a speaker, I'm an author, and the most important job right now is being a mom, being a wife, and making my mark in the world. And how am I doing that? So I am the president of Izzy's Legacy Inc., a nonprofit organization that I literally just formed in March of this year. It was something that I was working towards for the last year for a very important reason. I had a daughter in 2007 who was diagnosed at the age of 7 months old with a very rare leukemia. This leukemia could not be treated with regular chemotherapy. Once I heard the word leukemia, I thought, okay, there's been a lot of advancements. This is something that we can absolutely deal with, right? Once we know what we have, we know we can deal with it. But unfortunately, it turned out to be something I had never heard of, JMML. 4 little letters that mean a hell of a lot. Because it's something that is so rare that there's no treatment for it. The only treatment that's available is a bone marrow transplant. That was in 2007, and that's still the same today. They still have not had enough advances. There's better chemotherapy to keep it at bay, but the treatment is still a bone marrow transplant. One of the important lessons that we learned was that as Hispanics, there is a low presence of Latinos on the registry. So no one in my family was a match for her, unfortunately. When you're talking about a transplant, whether it's a bone marrow or any other kind, your best chance of finding that is someone within your own family, most likely a sibling who share the same mother and father is going to be that match. Well, I had 2 other children and they were not matches for her. And my husband and I were only a half a match as well. So we had to now search onto this outside registry called Be the Match. To try and find hers. And one of the first things I was told was that is going to be hard. So that I had to get on television, get in the newspaper, have drives to help that. Fortunately, we did find her match, right? She was able to do that. But that information stayed with me even after that, because I realized that at a certain point during that journey, that when I put in my own information, my husband's and my other 2 children, that myself and my other 2 children had no matches out there. There was no one out there for us. So that if it had been one of us, there was nobody to save our lives, right? My husband and my daughter, she must have had more DNA like his. They were matches out there for the 2 of them, which is fantastic. But it stays with you. When I saw that, when I read that, my heart stopped. I was like, this is something that regardless of the outcome, we need to continue to share. So I lost Isabella in 2008, and not from that, she received a transplant and did fantastic. But unfortunately, when you're immune compromised, you're susceptible to other types of infections. And that was her case, where she caught a secondary infection, which then took her life, which is heartbreaking. But with that, we continue to share on just a local level, right? With our local churches and things like that. um, having drives and bringing that attention that, there is people that are Black, Hispanic, and of mixed ethnicity origins that don't have their matches out there, right? So we continue to work on that. Well, now my daughter, who was 9 years old, my oldest, is now 25 years old, and full circle moment for her, now works for Be the Match, the organization that was helping us back then. And she shared with me the difficulty she was having with patients that she was helping of the same background. Still the Hispanics, still the Blacks, still the people of mixed origins cannot find their matches. And there are people that are dying out there. And it just broke my heart. It broke my heart. And I said, you know what? There was this one little story that was significant. And that was of a little girl who was around 11 years old, who had been searching for hers for about 2 years and still no match. And, when my daughter had her drive, just a handful of people came, maybe 20 people came to her drive. And there were 2 others that she had drives for that were of Caucasian backgrounds. And there were thousands that showed up for them. So we talk about why is that, right? So this mother is crying and saying, how come nobody cares about my child? And at that moment, I said, I got to do something different. I got to do something so that we can have a different outcome. So that's when my whole journey began, with writing my book and getting out there and speaking. That's why you and I ran into each other, right? Because I joined this competition. I was working with Jesse Cruz, who is in charge of Merge Worldwide, and he was helping me learn how to speak so that I can get out on more stages and share this very important information.
Wow. Yeah, that's so I remember when you shared that at the competition, and it is so like what is the difference between like what is it that, have you figured it out yet? Like why?
Yeah, there's a lot of myths out there, right? So when you talk about, and I know this being Latina myself, right? So there is a mistrust of the medical community, and I'm a nurse. I'm in the medical community, right? So there's this distrust of the medical community that goes back generations, right? And rightly so, because unfortunately things were done to those of Hispanic, Black origins that of course are going to cause this mistrust. So when you're presented with information like this, let's say just one of the things, I go to a drive, one of the first questions I got asked by an African American person was, what are you going to do with my DNA? What happens to that once it's collected? Who gets it and what are they doing with it? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I then explained to them what it actually is, the process that you do with it. Some people think that I'm there to take blood, right? So they think that you're going to take my blood right now. So that is something. It used to be the process was that they would go into your hip bone and extract the marrow from inside the bone. That's where it comes from, right? That's no longer true. In 90% of the cases, it's as easy as giving blood now. They're able to take the stem cells, which is what they're looking for. They've furthered the process where they can just take it, such as when you're donating plasma. So when you go to a blood center and you're donating blood or plasma, they take out what they need and they give you the rest of your blood back to you, right? Same process, 90% of the cases. So it's not a surgery, nothing involved like that. People don't know that, right? So even though there's people out there educating, Be the Match does a fantastic job of going out there and educating people, there's still a hesitancy. As soon as they hear blood, as soon as they hear these keywords, they're like, oh no, not me. Because you always think it's not going to happen to me, right? Mm-hmm. Until it does. Mm-hmm. Until it does. Every 3 minutes, someone in the United States is diagnosed with a blood cancer. Wow. Every 3 minutes. So the likelihood that you or somebody you know is going to be diagnosed with something like that is very high, right? So don't wait. My whole thing is don't wait until it happens to you or somebody that you love. And now you're waiting like, oh my God, now we got to get this going. Be proactive. Do it now. People still need you. It doesn't have to be, we're all connected. It doesn't have to be somebody you know. You could truly help somebody you don't know, as was the case of Isabella's donor. You know, he was, and I absolutely love this part of the story, is because he was not on the registry. He wasn't on there. He happened to join at the same time that I started my search. and he
No
is not
way.
Hispanic. Yeah, yeah. His place of employment was having a drive for a little girl of one of his coworkers who had leukemia. So he said, "Let me see, let me try. Maybe I'm a match for this little girl," and ended up being called for a little girl thousands of miles away. Like almost
Oh
instantly,
my.
he tells me. Yeah, it was almost like a week or two after him joining where he got the call. I had started my search. He was having a drive all the way out in Oklahoma. and and he was called for her. So I say that's how God works, right? And he works even greater than that because God can see farther than I can. He knew that he was going to do this in my future. He knew, right? And that the story needed to be important. So Mike is his name, is not your typical Latino, right? So you're thinking, I need to find somebody in my origin because that's what we're told, right? He had some diversity in him. So even though he was mostly Caucasian, his grandmother on his father's side was from Mexico. So he had some diversity in him where he was able to match my daughter closer than us, than my husband or myself. That's
Wow.
crazy.
That is crazy. I'm like, is there a reason for that? Do you know the reason, or that's just the DNA? There's really
That's
no.
just the combination of the DNA. There are so many combinations, right? And he just happened to have the right one. Something is special about that man because he has not only been called for my daughter, he was called for two others, right? So
What?
that diversity that lived within him allowed him to match multiple people.
Wow.
So when I talk about this, I say to you, if you have any kind of diversity in you, and who doesn't these days, right? If you have some sort of diversity within you, I'm talking to you because you could be the answer to a mother's prayer, a father's prayer, a brother, a sister. I said, and that's my goal, that no mother, father, brother, sister should ever feel hopeless like that mom who said, why does nobody care about my child? Right? Or feel the way that we did. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Right? No one should feel that way. Let's do our part. Let's educate ourselves. Yes, we have this mistrust, but in order to get away from the mistrust, it's education. It means let me listen to facts. Let me speak to somebody who's been through this. And that's why I call myself the triple threat, right? I say because I am a nurse, because I am Latina, and because I'm a mother who went through it. I'm all three. If you want to talk to somebody like that, that's me. I will tell you it's an easy process and one that's not going to harm you. Actually, Be the Match does a fantastic job with helping you. So if you think that loss of wages or, is it going to be, I have to go somewhere far to get this done? They make it very convenient for you to do it in your own hometown as much as possible. They'll cover lost wages if that is may happen, and it's completely covered. So there's no financial burden on you, right? It's all paid for by the person who needs this life-saving gift
Oh wow,
through their insurance.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow. And so, well, you kind of stole the words right out of my mouth. Is what would you tell somebody if they were, if they heard this and they were like, just like you said, like I've heard the things that are not factual, and you have the facts, and so to just give them that piece. What else would you tell them?
So those are the questions I usually get, right? What is it like? What's the process like? How about joining the registry? How simple it is, right? Especially now. I said, you guys have all gone through 2 years of COVID where you were getting cotton swabs up your noses, reaching your brains, right? Swab, swab, swab. It's nothing like that. If you could do that, this is nothing. It's easier than brushing your teeth. Easier because it's a swab, a little cotton swab that goes in the inside of your cheek. That's as simple as it is. 10 seconds each side. The postage paid envelope comes to your house. You put it back in, you mail it back out. How easy is that? Right?
Yes.
So any obstacle you can think of, right? I'm like, there's a way around that. There's really no excuse. If you really want to help, where there's a will, there's a way, right? And Be the Match has made it so easy and so simple just to get on that registry. Now, I've been on that registry since I'm 25 years old. I've never been called. I don't know why that is. Again, I had no matches out there. So the fact that my DNA may be some rare kind as well, maybe. I don't know. But I said yes way before I even knew that we would come around. Both my husband and I had joined in our church. We had gone, there was somebody who was doing a drive for a little girl as well. We had just gotten married, not knowing that just a few years down the road, we would be those parents who were also searching,
Wow.
right? So it comes back to you in ways that you never imagined, you know? But I said, I'm there till I'm 60. So if anybody needs it, I'm here.
Yeah. So give a little bit of insight on like the ages and like what we had talked about with mine.
Yeah. Right. And yeah, that was funny, right? We couldn't figure out why you couldn't join. And it
I
was,
know.
they had lowered the age, right? When I joined, it was till you were 65, 60 or 65, 60 maybe. So you could join up until then. Now they've changed it. So now you have to be between the ages of 18 and 40. Why? Nobody's discriminating. It is because they have found that the best possible outcome to the person receiving that transplant comes when those cells are young and healthy and active. Remember, when we're talking about the other person in the process, right? They're the ones that have to get chemotherapy in order to get rid of their own immune system, right? So it's eradicating it. It's very dangerous. It's like they have to be alone. They can't be around anyone else because they have no immune system. Now, when they transplant your bone marrow into them, now the cells are going to generate, right? So they're going to grow, and then they're going to attach themselves to your own bone inside the marrow there. And it not only teaches, bone marrow transplants are not just for cancer. So they do treat cancers, but they also treat blood disorders. So people who don't produce enough red blood cells, people who don't, like sickle cell anemia, that the ones they do produce are odd shaped, right? So they can't hold oxygen. That's sickle cell anemia, which is something that's very well known out there, right? And it causes people it shortens their lifespan. It causes a lot of pain and discomfort. It is the treatment for it. It is the cure for it, a bone marrow transplant. So there's over 70 different things that a bone marrow transplant can treat, but they have to eradicate that person's and replace it with yours. Another important thing, people tell me, oh, well, my blood type is O, B, or AB, something like that. It has nothing to do with your blood type. You could be a completely different blood type. What happens to the person who's receiving this transplant? Let's say I'm O, and the person who's donating to me is A. I now become their blood type.
Really interesting.
Yeah, because I now have their cells. Their bone marrow has been implanted in me. I now have theirs. So we're always going to be tied because of that, because I now have, it's just like getting a heart transplant. You have the other person's heart. Same thing. You now have their bone marrow. So their cells that are producing were theirs. They gave it to you. They gave you that gift. Wow. So now within you lives this other person. So your blood type changes to that person's.
Wow.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's interesting that it can, your DNA and everything just shifts. That's crazy.
It just shifts over.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So I'm learning so many things with you today. So I love it. I hope the listeners are learning as well. So, when you said you just started this in March. So you literally started it right after we met then.
Yeah. So I had applied for the nonprofit organization at that time. So what I did last year, so I found this out, it was last January, when my daughter shared that story with me, and it's crazy, right? I told her, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what it is. I said, but I'm going to do something. Whether I get on social media and act crazy, because people are not used to me acting crazy. I'm a nurse. I'm a professional for all of my life, right? I don't get on social media. I just literally got a Facebook not that long ago, right? So that's not my thing. My thing is not getting in front of people and talking and showing myself. I'm very uncomfortable with that, right? But sometimes you have to do that in order to reach the people, in order to reach the people that are actually going to help, right? So I said, I am going to do something. I just don't know what it is. I haven't found my vehicle of getting that done. I was playing with the idea of writing a book in my mind, because when I lost my daughter, one of the things that people kept telling me was to join a support group. And in order to get through my grief. and everything that I was going through. After I left, I felt like I dedicated my life literally to medicine. I went into it at 15, right?
Wow.
I said, so I dedicate my entire life to medicine, and it failed me. I had dedicated my life to God. I'm a cradle Catholic. He failed me. In my mind, that's what I thought. So I didn't want to be a nurse anymore. I didn't want to do any of this because I didn't believe in anything that I was doing, because everything, as far as I was concerned, failed me, right? So I was in a weird space where I questioned my faith, I questioned my profession, I questioned everything about me that I had known up until that point, because my grief was that deep. When you love deeply, you grieve deeply, right? And as a mom, we all know how that is. So I was going through the motions because I had two other children, and I know I had to live for them, and I had to move forward for them, but I didn't know how to do that. So I was trying to figure it out, and I didn't want to go to a support group. I didn't, because I felt like nobody could understand the conflict that was within me because of these things, these points. Why couldn't I save my child? Why couldn't we figure this out? Right? So I went to books. So I would lock myself up in my room whenever they were asleep. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't feel like anybody could understand me. And I would look for books. I was always an avid reader as a child. I love books, could lose myself in books. So I used that as my therapy, right? And I would read other mothers that had lost their child and how did they get through it. And, all those different things. I was reading and reading and reading and reading until there were tools in there to help me. Right. And I didn't want medication. I felt, because of that whole medicine thing, I felt that's not going to help me. So that's just a Band-Aid. I want something real. So I started learning about holistic measures. I'm a board certified holistic nurse today, but I wasn't then. So I said, I got to find ways to get myself back up and running, back up to some sort of myself. And I want to find ways to do that without medication. So that's when meditation came in, aromatherapy came in, Reiki came in, all those modalities. And I would try all these different things to see what would work for me. And slowly and surely, I started coming back and figuring things out through reading and through these methods. And it did work. It worked and it helped me. And then once it helped me, I started helping my children with those same things, trying to get the family back, because I said, this is not the mom that Isabella knew. She'd be upset if she saw who I turned into. I said, so I can't do that. I gotta figure this out. So I was playing with that, being that, maybe books, that's what helped me. So if somebody doesn't want to go out and face the world, they can certainly buy a book and stay home and figure it out the way I did. So I said, maybe a book is the way, right? And then one night I was just watching Facebook, scrolling through, and I saw who would then become my publisher, Emilio and Daniela Roman, on something just like this, them talking about sharing your story with the world. And something inside of me said, that's it. It just something said, that's it. Reach out to them. They're the ones. And I just knew, and I did. I reached out to them. I said, I want to know more about this. They were having an event, and I attended. It was in the middle of COVID, so I attended virtually like this. And I was so inspired by the people who were writing their books and sharing their story that I said, this is the way. I said, so this is it. I decided to write my book, which is called When the Answer is No, Finding Purpose Through Pain. And it talks about when you hope and you pray for a positive outcome to a difficult situation, and you get what feels like a no. So I prayed for healing. It didn't happen, right? I prayed during 9/11. I was a public health nurse in New York City when 9/11 happened, and I suffered from PTSD. So that was my first real delving into that emotional trauma. Before that, I had never really experienced anything like that. So I felt like, that whole thing too. So I'm hoping and praying for these people that were in these towers, and that didn't happen, right? It was bad. It was evil. I said, so when you get a no, or what you perceive as a no, what do you do with that? How do you maintain your faith? How do you put one foot in front of the other? Right? So I answer that question for you. When the answer is no, what do you do with that? And I show you what happens and how I was able to navigate through that. So I said, this is a book that's going to help people to heal. And with that, in it is going to provide that information about joining the registry. And I put a code in there that leads you right to the registry, so that if you're moved by the story, and the information provided, I'm going to reach more people that way than my voice could ever reach, is through a book. So I said, I don't know what I'm doing yet. I said, but I know that I want the proceeds of this book to go through. I want to form a foundation, a nonprofit, where number one, I'm going to continue to educate people of that demographic, and number two, to be able to bless people financially who are going through a cancer journey, because I know firsthand how that is. So those are the two big takeaways that I had through mine, and this is just our way of giving back.
Well, I so appreciate you just sharing your heart and something that was so painful for you to walk through, but you're making it your purpose, and just sharing with people, giving them education, giving them the tools, helping them walk through, and sharing your story, because as you share your story and people read that, then like you said, we're all connected. And so as people read your story, they connect with you, then they're going to be able to start to get that healing as well that you have been able to go through with you and your family. And so, if you were able to, if one person even just listen to this, and they're struggling right now. They're going through, a loss of a child. And what would you say to them to give them hope?
So I've been asked this many times, right? How did you make it through? I can't. People that have lost their child many, many years before have read my book and said, God, I want to be like you, right? How did you do it? One day at a time. One day at a time. You can't skip steps, right? Number one in healing is acceptance. First, you have to accept what has happened to you. That was my bigger thing. I didn't want to accept it. I was mad. I was one angry Latina, right? And I'm like, we're very passionate people. So I said, when I got to the place of acceptance, where I said, okay, there's nothing that I can do that's going to change this, right? I can't go back in time. I can't bring her back. So I have to accept that she is no longer physically here, right? It doesn't mean she's not here in other ways, but that her physical presence is no longer here. I accept that. Now I can move to the next step in healing, right? So acceptance is the last part in those stages of grief. There are 7 stages to grief. That last stage is the first one that I say in healing. Accept. Once you accept, take it one day at a time. Something beautiful that you said to me the other day that resounded is deal with it so you can heal from it, right? Deal to heal. So I'm like, that's it in a nutshell. That's it. Deal with it, and you'll heal from it. Love it. Can't wait for my shirt.
I know. I'm in the process of ordering them. I'm so excited too. I have a few other people too that are raising their hand to have it. So I appreciate that. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your heart and just your knowledge. And what's next for Izzy's legacy? What is your big goal that you want to accomplish? Where are you going with all
I said, listen, we're here, right? And it's funny that I got the confirmation from the government that I was an official 501c3 right before her birthday. It was like the day before her birthday that it came through, and I had applied like months before, and you finally got through. It came right on time. So those things like that tell me I'm on the right road. So it's going to be a long one. The first steps are here. We have our first, what's going to be an annual fundraising gala event, September 16th in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Anybody that wants to know about that can go right into my website at izzyslegacyinc.org, and they can see all the different things that are happening there, the event there, buy tickets to the event, or if you just want to donate to the nonprofit, you can also do that from the website. Next steps is, once we have the funding, is to start putting on events where we're going to go ahead and educate these people on the very same things that we talked about today. And we're also going to start blessing some people who are on that cancer journey. There are people out there that are struggling to pay for food or to pay for their medication. Some of these medications, and my daughter's as well, was out of pocket. The insurance didn't cover it. That's a whole other show, right? But you had to pay for it. And if you're struggling and loss of income, I couldn't work only but a certain amount of hours because I had to be with her. So we went down to like a one income family after being two incomes for a long time. And it was because some people got together in my town and decided to have a fundraiser, just like I'm having, to help my family. We would have lost it all had it not been for the kindness of strangers who said, I hear you, I feel you, I want to help you. And because of them, we were able to still be here and move forward. We want to do the very same thing for people as well. If you're struggling to pay for that medication, let me know and we'll help you with that.
Wow. What a beautiful way to give back to your daughter and just keep her going. And wow, that's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Listen, we have to honor everyone's legacy. When we leave this earth, I want to be able to say, not that I made $1 million, but that I was able to help save 1 million lives.
Wow,
if I can say that at the end of my life, what a blessing. What a blessing.
Yes. Absolutely.
So that's my goal. I need everybody's help to get there.
Yeah, well,
I need 1 million people on that registry.
Yes. Well, you're doing such a great job. I'm seeing you pop up different places, and you're on social media now, and
yeah, I know, it's crazy. I don't even know how to work it. I'm figuring it out as I go along. Instagram, TikTok.
We're all figuring it out sometimes, right? So we just give grace and keep on moving. But
yeah. And listen, I also want to mention that I have my own podcast as well. That's Unscripted with Mariyln Morales on YouTube. Like, subscribe, join that, because I share stories, and you're one of my guests too, where we share stories of people who have gone through a struggle and how they got through it. I think that's one of my takeaways, is that, and in this world today, we share stories, right, like this on this kind of forum. It's the same as if we would have written a book, but we get to people faster, right? And we far reaching. So your story's coming up soon. So we got to direct people there so they can hear your story too.
Yeah. Well, I just love how God just keeps connecting all of us, and we're just sharing our story and making our mark in the world, and just impacting people around us. And we're just people are rising up and just speaking out. And I think that is probably one of the biggest things. Is for so long I feel like people have been so suppressed, and well, we don't talk about things like that, or we just sweep it under the rug, or things like that. And people are really starting to open their mouth now, and they're starting to share their stories, because I think we're finding the more that people share stories, the more that they're dealing with it, and they're healing from it. And so healing through every time we share our story, there's healing that is created in that. And then you touch another life that maybe they're not the same exact as your story, but they're very parallel with your story. And you can bits and pieces of each person's story, you can really relate, and that's where you get that heart connection, and that's where you just again, you just connect together, and you all rise up together, and just impact the world using your pain for purpose, and just sharing. I love it. So, well, I thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing your story, and you guys need to go find her on YouTube. You need her podcast, and get on her registry, grab her book, and just start following her on social media, because she's a powerhouse woman, and she's getting some things done, and she can't do it by herself. She needs everybody to come with her. So I thank you so much again. You have a beautiful rest of the day, and we will see you again next time.
Thank you.
This is your host, Rachel Bess, and I hope you loved the show. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel, as well as share with a friend. If you would like, you can follow me on Instagram as well as Facebook under Rachel Best. You can also find me on my website at rachelbestspeaks.com.